I think we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to the workshop, Healthy Lifestyle 101. If you need anything during the presentation in the chat, Lori or Carol, if you want me to pause anything at any time, if something doesn't sound right, please just alert me, and enjoy the presentation.
This is Martha Tate. I am a member of the Health, Wellness, and Safety Committee, and I'm an integrative nutrition health coach. Today, I'm going to talk to you about Let's Get Healthy, and we will talk about what foods to eat and what foods to avoid, why it's so important to get healthy right now. We will talk about some tips for busy families to get a good meal on the table, and we will talk about picky eaters. And last of all, I'll give you some great resources that you can use for your family or that you can share with your local unit of PTA at your school. So let's get started. Why is nutrition especially important now? Well, in our COVID world, nutrition is very important right now because food is medicine. It's critical to our healthy immune system, to our physical, mental, and emotional well-being. But the nutrient content of our food has decreased over time, especially since the 1950s. And it takes more and more food to get the same amount of nutrients that we got in our fruits and vegetables in 1950. Much of the food we eat is processed, about 60% of our diet in America. And some of it is not even food, but food-like substances that we call frankenfood. We are simply overfed and undernourished as a nation. And our food supply, especially processed foods, contains pesticides, herbicides, preservatives, additives, flavor enhancers, coloring, and other chemicals that are increasingly seen as contributors to chronic health issues. The stats on chronic disease are very concerning, and our standard American diet is not serving us well, especially right now during the pandemic. So let's talk a little bit about those statistics. These are related to heart disease, autoimmune disease, diabetes, obesity, and more. 1 in 4 of children in America are overweight or obese, and this has tripled in the past 25 years. 1 in 3 children born in 2000 are predicted to have type 2 diabetes by the time they're 20. Aggression, bullying, and violence are up in our schools, and all of these problems are complicating the treatment and recovery from COVID. Talk about our food supply too. Food companies are in the business of making money. The bottom line is they're shareholders. And in the US, 10 companies control about 90% of our food supply. Corporations hire food scientists, and their sole job is to figure out what the bliss point of foods are so that we want to eat more and more of them. We are eating more and more processed foods that are high in calories but have fewer nutrients. Now, corporations are not evil. They simply have over-innovated, and they are not responsible for our health. We are. There are about 80,000 chemicals on the market today, and only a small percentage have been proven to be safe. U.S. agriculture sprays our produce with about 1.2 billion pounds of pesticides each year. Refined sugar and high fructose corn syrup, which is found in almost all of our processed foods, are empty calories that lead to insulin resistance and eventually type 2 diabetes. One study found that sugar is 8 times more addictive than cocaine. Sugary beverages are the single largest contributor of calories and added sugar to our diets. 12-ounce Coke has about 10 teaspoons of sugar. A fruit punch has about 9, but the American Heart Association recommends no more than 6 per day. Salt is also an issue. About 500 milligrams of sodium is all we need, but we're eating about 3,400 milligrams of sodium each day. This can lead to high blood pressure, heart disease, and stroke. So, my favorite topic, food. Real food changes everything. Hippocrates said, "Let thy food be thy medicine, and thy medicine be thy food." We need to be eating a variety of colorful, whole plants every day in the form as close to Mother Nature as possible. Eat the rainbow. Keep a chart on your fridge and let kids check off the colors of foods they've eaten that day. Balance your plate with lots of veggies. 3 to 4 ounces of lean animal or plant protein, whole grains, healthy fats. If you can eat organic, by all means do so, but I know it's expensive. And if you can't, don't let that stop you from eating your fruits and veggies. Simply wash them carefully and thoroughly with a solution of water and baking soda or water and vinegar. Check the Dirty Dozen Clean 15 list, and I'll show that to you in a moment. And remember, eat foods that come from plants instead of foods that were made in a plant. Shop the outer perimeter of your grocery store because the inner aisles are full of processed foods. Learn to read labels. Stick to 5 ingredients or less if you can, and begin to reduce sugar, high fructose corn syrup, salt, processed vegetable oils, and white flour. Here's a copy of the Dirty Dozen list. It's updated each year, and you can check for it by Googling online. And I always try to buy my strawberry, spinach, and kale organic. But the rest, you can figure out what's best for your family and what you can afford. Just be sure and clean them thoroughly. Dr. Joel Fuhrman talks about eating a micronutrient-rich diet. He talks about G-bombs, which are greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries, seeds, and nuts. You can use this chart to get the most bang for your buck as you prepare meals for your family. It shows you which have the most nutrients and which has the least nutrients. Now, do you have picky eaters at your house? If you have kids, you probably do. My wife and I will split the spaghetti, and our son will have the ridiculously overpriced kids' mac and cheese that he will eat 2 bites of before complaining he doesn't like it and will end up taking it home for leftovers that will get ignored until it rots away in the fridge. Sound familiar? Well, let's talk a little bit about picky eaters. There are 2 great sources online, Your Kids Table and Daniel Ben's Picky Eater Protocol. I've combined some of their do's and don'ts for you, but you can find great resources at their websites and great classes as well. First of all, don't bribe, beg, or pressure, or be a short order cook. And don't allow endless snacking or grazing all day. And don't allow mealtime to become a power struggle or a miserable event for your family. This can lead to overeating, unhealthy relationships to food, and follow them into adulthood. Do encourage them many times to try new things. Include them in meal prep because they're more likely to eat foods if they help prepare it. Separate their foods on the plate. Offer small bites, especially meat. And always offer at least one thing they really like, even if it's only some goldfish crackers. Allow them to spit into a napkin or cup if they cannot handle the taste or texture. Pair new foods with a favorite dipping sauce and smile and act as though what you're eating is the most delicious thing you've ever had in your life. Make mealtime an enjoyable time because food really can be fun. Now, let's take our meals back from corporations. Eat at home as much as possible, or in local mom and pop restaurants that source their foods locally. Control the food environment in your home. If you hate cooking, take turns and include the kids. They need to learn to cook too. Try crock pot, Instant Pot, sheet pan, or stir fry meals, which are all quick and easy. Make it simple and nutritious. Home is best and less expensive, but there are some really good home delivery meal companies that you can access, and you can find out the best ones by going to buyersguide.org. Stop drinking sweetened beverages or juice at every meal. Make it a treat, and reduce processed foods and learn to read labels. Planning is a real time saver and emotion booster. Plan meals for the week and allow each family member to have input. Put a planner on the fridge and let them write in at least one meal they want for that week. They don't get to choose them all, but if they can choose one, that would be great. And include everyone in the family. But don't be a short order cook. Make one meal. Make your shopping list ahead of time. Don't overbuy so you won't waste your veggies. Limit shopping trips to 1 per week or have them delivered if you can. Add new foods and recipes gradually, building a whole month of recipes you can rotate if you wish. Check your planner the night before so you can thaw meat, soak beans, or even cook rice or quinoa ahead of time so you aren't so rushed. Batch cook and freeze on the weekends is a great idea And always follow the adage, cook once, eat twice. If you know you're going to have rice twice a week, once in a Mexican meal and once in an Asian meal, double it, throw half the batch in the fridge or the freezer for later use. At-home tips for better learning. Really, nutrition is very important to helping your child learn. So make sure your child has a great breakfast. Try a blueberry smoothie with a protein. That structure each day is so important to their emotional well-being. Make mealtime fun and positive. Talk about the great parts of their day, your weekend plans, upcoming events, anything positive, but decrease food talk and pressure to eat. Focus on your child's strengths, not their weaknesses. And work with your child's teacher, school, and district to support non-food rewards in the classroom, healthy school lunch programs, school gardens, and scratch-cooked meals at school. Now, here are my takeaways. Eat real food, quality food, and do it together. Be very transparent with your family on why it's important to make changes. Reassure them that they can still have treats, just not every day. Because the stronger your why, the easier your how will be. Gradually crowd out processed and healthy foods with real food and change your environment, because if it's in your house, it's in your mouth. Try a pantry makeover, small plates, grow your own food, even if it's only a pot of tomatoes on the back porch, and cook at home. Remember, exercise is really critical to good health, but you can't out-exercise a bad diet. You might want to teach your family Hari Hachi Bu, which is an Okinawan Japan practice that they are taught from early in life that helps you to stop eating when you're 80% full and push away from the table. They also practice mindfulness when they eat. You will become more and more like your closest 5 friends, so include people in your inner circle who will support your health journey. And remember, you are the architect of your life, and it begins with good health. Design and build the life of your dreams and pass that legacy on to your children. Teach your children well. Okay, here's your call to action. Just start, and start small. There are usually 3 responses to a presentation like this. You are an, oh my gosh, overachiever. I'm going to change everything tomorrow. But I recommend that you don't. Start small. There's an, oh my goodness, I'm overwhelmed. I don't even know where to start. Well, yes, you do. Pick one thing and start there. And then here's where I want you to land. The, oh my goodness, I can do this. One small step at a time in a way that works for me and my family. I can guarantee that if you begin to make some of these small changes, you'll be healthier, happier, have more energy, and remember, it's progress, not perfection. You may be a self-starter and can do it on your own, or you may need an accountability coach. Kids are great for that because they will truly hold your feet to the fire. You may just need a cheerleader, and a friend can serve as that. But if you need more than that, if you need a cheerleader, a non-judgmental friend, a guide on the side, find a good health coach. Then here's a list of resources for you, some great books, some great websites that you can go to for help and for some recipes. But remember, if you have questions, need recipes, or for much more, contact me at martha.harmonyhealth@gmail.com. Thank you for joining me today. I wish you good health. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to call. Thanks for your time today.
Good morning. I'm Carol Muller. I've been a member of Colorado PTA's Health, Wellness, and Safety Committee for over 5 years, and I was the State Director of Action for Healthy Kids until last July. And in that role, I led grant projects related to healthy schools that Colorado PTA and Action for Healthy Kids worked on together. You'll see that many of the resources in this presentation are from Action for Healthy Kids, since I'm so familiar with them. Today, I'm going to talk about getting kids and families active at home and at school. I'll talk about the benefits of physical activity, and I'll provide some strategies and resources to help you, your family, and your PTA get kids moving more. Because our time is so limited today, I'm not going to cover the information on every slide. Cholera PTA will make these slides available to you following the workshop so you can review the tips at your leisure and explore the resources that are linked throughout. So why is movement so important? Well, kids experience many, many physical benefits, some of which are obvious and some which might not be so obvious. Stronger bones and muscles, better heart and brain health, lower risk of diseases. And with anxiety, depression, and other mental health issues on the rise today, it's really important to note how much physical activity can help psychological well-being, improve confidence, and self-esteem. Physical activity is also crucial for optimal learning. It improves brain function, memory, attendance, and problem solving. It leads to better school attendance and academic performance, and it helps kids to stay focused in the classroom. Take a look at these brain scans of students taking a test. You can see that after 20 minutes of walking, brains are significantly more active. So how much physical activity do children need? These recommendations are from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and are supported by lots of other national experts. Preschool kids should be active every day, all throughout the day. 6 to 17-year-olds need 60 minutes or more of moderate to vigorous physical activity. And parents should encourage their kids to do a variety of activities so they can work on all three elements of fitness that you see at the bottom of the slide. Endurance develops when kids regularly get aerobic activity. During aerobic exercise, large muscles are moving, the heart's beating faster, and a person is breathing harder. Aerobic activity strengthens the heart and it improves the body's ability to deliver oxygen to all of its cells. Aerobic activities include walking, running, dancing, skating, swimming, and of course, many, many more. Improving strength does not mean lifting weights. Instead, kids can do push-ups, stomach crunches, pull-ups, and other exercises to help tone and strengthen their muscles. They can also improve their strength when they climb, when they do a handstand, or when they wrestle. Stretching exercises help improve flexibility, allowing muscles and joints to bend and move more easily through their full range of motion. Kids get chances every day to stretch when they reach for a toy, when they practice a split or do a cartwheel. So how well are kids meeting these recommendations for physical activity? Well, these statistics are from the 2018 U.S. report on physical activity for children and youth that was put out by the National Physical Activity Plan Alliance. Unfortunately, less than a quarter of children 6 to 17 are getting the recommended amount, and their level of activity often depends on a number of factors, such as their gender, their age, their abilities, and the neighborhood in which they live. Boys are getting more activity than girls. Children and adolescents living in neighborhoods with high crime and limited access to parks are generally less likely to meet the recommendations. Additionally, programs supporting children's physical activity may be less effective for some children than others, which means that giving all children the same activity programs can actually help to increase that physical activity gap that I just mentioned. Unfortunately, only 3% of secondary schools have established and implemented a comprehensive school physical activity program, which is considered the gold standard. The report card committee gave a D+ grade for overall physical activity for U.S. children and youth. So clearly we have a lot of work to do. So how do you get kids motivated to be active, especially those who aren't natural athletes? Kids can certainly be fit even if they're not winning trophies. The key is finding activities that they enjoy. When kids find an activity that's fun, they're going to do it a lot. They're going to get better at it. Then they'll feel accomplished and they'll want to do it even more. Likewise, if they're pushed into activities that they don't like or activities that are too competitive, that don't match their personality, they're unlikely to want to participate and they'll end up feeling frustrated and they'll feel like exercising is a chore. So whether it's soccer or ballet, if your child doesn't enjoy an activity or feels frustrated by failure, it may be time to switch to something else. And this doesn't mean that the time spent on those activities has been wasted. Ask your child which ones they'd like to try next. Achieving a transition like this smoothly without making a child feel like a failure can prevent negative feelings about sports and physical activity in general. And if your child is not the athletic type, dislikes physical activity, it's even more important to help them find a niche that they'll enjoy, so that you really don't want them to abandon physical activity altogether. And remember that kids are always looking to parents for guidance, support, and encouragement. It's important to set a good example. So don't groan about your own exercise. Make it a priority. Talk about how it's a priority, and look for chances to be physically active as a family. So here are 10 tips from the USDA for staying active as a family. And you can download this as a handout in English or Spanish and pass it out to families in your community if you like. First, set specific activity times. Determine time slots throughout the week when the whole family is available. Plan ahead and track your progress. Write your activity plans on a family calendar. Let the kids help in planning things. Allow them to check off each activity after it's completed. Include work around the house. Have your kids help you with raking, sweeping, weeding, vacuuming, and use what's available. Physical activity doesn't have to be expensive. Plan activities that require little or no equipment or facilities. Use water bottles, canned goods, or other items for strength training. If you don't have weights around the house, you can stretch with a towel, walk or run up and down the stairs. Build new skills. Enroll the kids in classes they might enjoy. Help them practice. This will keep things fun and interesting and introduce new skills. Find out what programs your community recreation center offers for free or for a minimal charge. And choose some activities that don't depend on good weather. Try mall walking, indoor swimming, family dancing, or even active video games that force them to get up and move around. Turn off the TV. More on screen time shortly. And this is really important. Start small. Begin by introducing one new family activity and add more when you feel everyone is ready. You don't want to burn your family out just after you've gotten started. Invite others to join your family activities. This is a great way to spend time with friends while being physically active. Plan parties with active games. And when it's time to celebrate, do something active as a reward. Here's a good resource from Shape America, 101 tips for family fitness fun. So there are 110 tips that they have online on their website, and the tips are all divided into the categories that you see there on the screen. So you can explore that after the workshop. Let's talk about screen time. Children and adolescents spend a lot of time watching screens, including smartphones, tablets, gaming consoles, TVs, and of course, computers. On average, children 8 through 12 in the US spend 4 to 6 hours a day watching or using screens for non-educational purposes, and teens spend up to 9 hours a day. Research on the effects of screen time has been less than definitive to date. There isn't a lot of longitudinal data, and many studies lump all screen time together into one category, though it seems unlikely that video chatting with grandma, for example, is going to have a lot in common with playing Grand Theft Auto. Researchers are starting to pay close attention to the kinds of content kids are consuming via their digital devices. They're looking at the environment that surrounds screen time, including parenting and socioeconomic status. They're studying both the potential benefits of screens and the potential physical and mental health drawbacks. And to date, the picture that has emerged suggests that the youngest children don't learn well from screens. As kids get older, they can learn meaningful information from screens, but the ubiquity of digital devices also means that children can easily spend too much time being sedentary. Nevertheless, total abstinence from recreational screen time could backfire for older kids and tweens. The tips on this slide and on the next are from the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. Again, you can read them at your leisure after the workshop. So amid this rapidly changing tech environment, the American Academy of Pediatrics, or AAP, has developed a family media use plan in which parents and kids can negotiate limits and boundaries around screen usage. This resource is available both in English and Spanish. Next, I'd like to talk briefly about sleeping. A majority of middle schoolers and high schoolers are not getting enough. Kids age 6 through 12 need 9 to 12 hours daily, and teens need 8 to 10 hours. The AAP recommends that secondary schools start at 8:30 a.m. or later to help increase the amount of sleep that teens are getting, but most still start earlier. Some schools across the country have made that switch, but there's a long way to go to bring schools on board. And it's not a simple thing for schools to do, as a major schedule change like this impacts so many other things like lunch timing, sports, and other after-school activities. This slide has tips for families on how to help kids develop good sleep habits from the National Center for Chronic Disease Prevention and Health Promotion. Action for Healthy Kids has a comprehensive online resource library that's filled with activities that you can do as a family at home or at school. Here are just a few listed on this screen that you'll find when you use the filter PE, physical activity and play, with the location set as home. You'll find step-by-step instructions, templates, and further resources listed for each activity when you pull it up. So since children and adolescents spend half their lives in school, it is really important that part of that 60 minutes of activity they need each day occurs at school. In addition to higher test scores, teachers report that when kids have had time to be active, they're less disruptive and there are fewer discipline problems. There are so many ways that parents, PTAs, and school staff can partner together to increase physical activity. Does your school have recess every day, and are the kids encouraged to move around? Are active games and equipment provided for recess? Are kids active at least half the time during PE class? Do teachers use movement breaks during class? Does your school community offer physical activity clubs or open gym for students before or after school? Do you promote walking and biking to school? Are there safety issues that need to be addressed in order to implement walking and biking programs? Does your PTA require that school parties and celebrations and family events have an active component? You can visit Shape America to learn about establishing a comprehensive school physical activity program. Active Schools and AFHK are also great resources for promoting physical activity at school. A virtual or at-home learning environment can incorporate physical activity just as well as an in-school setting. Review this slide for tips on how to keep kids active during remote learning. And another great resource from Action for Healthy Kids. This helps parents and school staff partner through physical activity initiatives. This handout provides at school alongside at-home strategies to implement and promote each of the initiatives that are listed. And we're very lucky to have an excellent set of resources that were provided by PE teacher Beth Marr from Mountain View Elementary in Academy District 20 in Colorado Springs. Beth has created a series of activity videos that you can use at home or at school. You can access all of Beth's resources at the Google folder that's linked on the slide. They're holiday-centered videos. There's a whole set based on Dr. Seuss books. She's also shared a physical activity game board that you see on the right called Mountain Lionopoly. And she's got a virtual PE class with activity logs. You click on each icon and come up with a different activity or resource or log for your activity. And finally, there's just a few more great physical activity resources on this last slide, which you can explore on your own. I encourage you to email me at the address on the intro slide if you have any questions after the workshop about these tips or about the resources that I've listed. And that's it. My time's up. Thanks so much for your attention today.
Good morning, and thank you for joining our Colorado PTA Health, Wellness, and Safety Committee workshop. I'm Lori Odom, co-chair of the committee. In this part of the workshop, I'll be discussing the background for current vaccine recommendations, safety measures in vaccine production and follow-up, give an overview of approved COVID-19 vaccines and digital misinformation, and briefly discuss the current status of routine childhood immunizations. Before widespread use of effective vaccines, infections were a cause of significant morbidity and mortality. Smallpox alone caused about 300 million deaths in the 20th century. And despite the creation of a vaccine in 1796, it took nearly 200 years and a worldwide vaccination effort to gain control of this disease. Although not as virulent, polio, measles, rubella, chickenpox caused considerable illness and mortality until effective immunizations became available. On the upper right, you can see children paralyzed by polio learning to walk with braces. And the lower right, the typical appearance of a child with measles, which could be a life-threatening infection, unfortunately. Indeed, vaccinations are regarded as one of the greatest contributions to global health of any human invention. And childhood vaccination was actually one of the founding principles of the National PTA over 120 years ago. Now, after effective vaccine programs, smallpox has been eradicated, polio is nearly eradicated, and there are only a few outbreaks of these other infections in under-vaccinated groups. And with the availability of the human papillomavirus vaccine, there's been a significant decrease in cervical and nasopharyngeal cancers. Additionally, vaccinations are definitely a cost-effective measure. And vaccine quality continues to improve. Over the past 35 to 40 years, advances in lab technology made possible exposure to fewer antigens while increasing the effectiveness and number of vaccine preventable infections. Additionally, several vaccines, these with asterisks, can be combined to decrease the number of injections. However, in under-immunized communities, usually because of religious or personal beliefs, we still see occasional outbreaks, such as with measles, as depicted on this slide, with 5 significant outbreaks between 2016 and 2019. The most recent outbreak was in Samoa, where unfortunately only about 30% of the residents were vaccinated, and there were 5,700 measles infections and 83 deaths. You're undoubtedly wondering how vaccines are developed, especially with the rapid emergence of the COVID vaccines. Traditionally, it takes about 10 to 15 years from the vaccine concept to final approval by the FDA. There are initial tedious laboratory and animal studies, followed by obtaining an investigation of new drug or IND approval, and then clinical trials that include 3 distinct and defined phases with an increasing number of volunteers in each phase. But importantly, an independent data safety and monitoring review board critically reviews the results of each phase before the next phase can be entered. And in order to submit for final approval and a biologics license application, proof of safety and efficacy must be unequivocally demonstrated in phase 3. In the accelerated timeline of warp speed for COVID vaccine development, the same investigational standards, trial phases, and monitoring rigor are applied, but are accelerated, and some phases actually overlap. To decrease months of time and layers of paperwork and forms required for the final biologics license application, emergency use authorization is temporarily granted. Importantly, this is a regulatory and administrative, but not a scientific shortcut. The first 2 COVID vaccines to receive emergency use authorization in the United States are based on the messenger RNA platform, which has actually been studied in the lab for decades and is a process that can be standardized and easily scaled up. This illustration shows the RNA sequence that is actually a code that was developed in the lab for the spike protein the surface of the coronavirus. The code is encased in lipid coating to protect it. So when it's injected into the human, it isn't destroyed, and it can easily enter the immune cell that then starts to decode the messenger RNA and make millions of copies of the spike protein. And then the spike protein is recognized by the immune cells and antibodies are produced. These antibodies recognize the spike protein as foreign and will recognize and destroy the real SARS-CoV-2 virus if that person is infected. This is called antibody immunity. In addition to antibody immunity, there is also another type of immunity called cellular immunity, which actually may be even more responsible for the long-term immunity that we are beginning to see with these COVID vaccines. In this country, so far, 3 vaccines have been granted emergency use authorization. Initially, the Pfizer, followed by Moderna, both of which use the messenger RNA platform, and more recently, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, or Janssen vaccine. This vaccine uses technology related to the messenger RNA platform with instructions for producing the spike protein in double-stranded DNA instead of single-stranded messenger RNA. The J&J vaccine stores this DNA in the common cold adenovirus that's modified so it can't divide or cause illness, but easily enters the cells, where the DNA cannot interact at all with our own DNA, but it can be copied to produce the messenger RNA that then codes for the spike protein. The J&J vaccine comes out of decades of research as well, especially incorporating these adenovirus-based vaccines. A great benefit of this technology is that DNA is not as fragile as RNA, and the adenovirus's tough protein coat helps protect the genetic material inside. As a result, the J&J vaccine can be stored in regular refrigerator temperatures for up to 3 months, in contrast to the much colder temperatures required for the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. In addition to the rigorous monitoring that precedes vaccine production, there is robust and comprehensive post-licensure safety monitoring. Because vaccines are given to a large population of generally healthy individuals to prevent disease, they are held to much higher safety standards than other medications. A vaccine adverse event reporting system, or VAERS, was created in 1990 and is overseen by the CDC and FDA. It's a voluntary national reporting system that collects all reports of adverse events occurring after vaccination. It receives about 30,000 reports annually. Another post-licensure safety monitoring system, the Vaccine Safety Data Link, was created in 1995. It's based on a collaboration among 9 medical care organizations in the United States, with over 12 million children and adults enrolled in an integrated healthcare system with electronic medical records. Information related to vaccinations is accurate and consistent, allowing for valid determination of specific vaccine side effects using this system. And additionally, there's yet another voluntary free smartphone-based tool specifically for COVID vaccine recipients called vSafe. And it provides personalized health check-ins for each individual enrolled after receiving a COVID vaccine, but it is completely voluntary. You may be asking, which of the approved vaccines should you receive? It should be the one you can get, with the current exception that 16 and 17-year-olds must receive the Pfizer vaccine because that's the only vaccine licensed for that age group. There's no accurate way to compare one vaccine to the other because trials took place in different locations at different times, especially with regard to the J&J vaccine, when actually newer variants were circulating during those trials. Suffice it to say that these approved vaccines far exceed the hopes of scientists in terms of safety and efficacy. So far, they're essentially 100% effective in preventing serious COVID infections and hospitalizations, and all are substantially more effective than the annual flu vaccine. Importantly, the approved vaccines are not live COVID viruses. They can't change your DNA. They can't affect fertility or cause long-term health effects, and you can't get COVID or the flu from the vaccine. The vaccines also don't contain microchips or tracking devices. Reactions to vaccines are normal, however. Soreness, fatigue, malaise, fever, headache, all transient, are a good indication that your immune system is developing immunity to the virus. Post-vaccine, there is also a lot of information that has been reported that seems to get in the way of the proven safety and efficacy of the vaccines. And many people do have valid and understandable apprehension about receiving vaccines. Listening to their concerns and providing factual information and reliable resources is a good approach. But unfortunately, there's a great deal of misinformation in the social media and digital platforms about vaccines, as shown by this Vaccine Communication and Tracking Response Project, where you can see the increasing number of vaccine opposition comments between June 2019 and March 2021 on this graph. Since June 2019, this project has collected 5.2 million vaccine opposition mentions, nearly 7,900 mentions a day. That's why it's so important to obtain information from reliable sources, such as those in the slide deck you'll be receiving. I also want to briefly mention that not only can COVID cause infection that is severe or fatal, but it's becoming apparent that at least 30% of patients who survive COVID can have symptoms lasting for over 9 months or longer, the so-called long haulers or long COVID that you've probably heard about. This has recently been given actually a new acronym called PASC for post-acute sequelae of COVID. These long-term symptoms can be quite debilitating. Many of the manifestations are listed on this slide, with severe fatigue, intermittent headaches, and brain fog perhaps the most common. Over 50% of people who had mild COVID symptoms had persistent symptoms for 2 to 4 months. Some individuals report that the lingering symptoms are more debilitating than the acute infection, and even children have been reported to have persistent symptoms. Another important issue related to COVID is that children have fallen behind in their routine childhood immunizations. Healthcare providers and public health staff are actively involved in securing and promoting safe locations for children to receive these immunizations. A great resource for obtaining information about childhood immunization opportunities is Immunize Colorado, and a link to that website is on this slide. CDPHE also provides numerous childhood immunization resources, some of which are available in multiple languages, as seen on this slide. In summary, vaccines are the most effective tool for preventing the spread of serious contagious illnesses and improving global health. Vaccines that are granted emergency approval in the United States have been rigorously studied and proven to be safe and effective. Vaccines to prevent COVID-19 offer the potential to end this devastating pandemic. The United States has extensive vaccine safety monitoring systems in place to determine ongoing evidence of vaccine safety. The importance of maintaining routine childhood immunizations, obtaining information from reliable sources, and providing verifiable facts about vaccines cannot be overstated. This slide provides links to additional reliable sources for your reference. Again, you'll receive the slides from our 3 presentations with links to all of the resources. Thank you again for attending our Health, Wellness, and Safety Committee workshop this morning. We greatly appreciate your attendance.
So Lori, did you want to go ahead and share that you had a little bit of a vaccine update to share with everyone?
Yes, Jamie, thank you for that opportunity. I think it is important to leave you with accurate information. There have actually been 2 important developments since the recording of this workshop a little over a week ago. As you probably heard, last Tuesday, the 13th, the CDC and FDA recommended a pause in J&J vaccine administration because of a rare but quite serious clotting problem that occurred in 6 women ages 18 to 48 after nearly 7 million J&J vaccinations had been given at that time, or an incidence of less than 1 in a million. This problem is similar to that reported in Europe with the AstraZeneca vaccine, which interestingly also uses an adenovirus vector. The problem hasn't been reported with the 2 messenger RNA vaccines licensed here, neither with the Moderna or Pfizer. It's important to note how rare this problem is and that the pause demonstrates the effectiveness of the safety monitoring system that's in place. Moreover, preliminary findings of a recent study of 81 million people in the United States showed that after a documented COVID-19 infection, 39 in a million develop this rare clotting problem within 2 weeks of becoming infected. So the complications actually much less likely after a J&J vaccine than after developing a COVID infection. The second addendum to the pre-recorded webinar is that on Thursday, the 15th, the CDC reported 5,800 breakthrough cases of COVID-19 infections among, at that time, 77 million fully vaccinated Americans. This is a rate of 0.008%, so very low. 396 with breakthrough required hospitalization, 74 died. 65% of the breakthrough infections occurred in women, and 29% had no symptoms at all. The findings related to both the clotting problem and breakthrough infections are being actively studied and refined, and you'll likely hear information that increases understanding of these rare occurrences, along with evidence-based recommendations in the near future. But I wanted to leave you with information that is at least currently up to date. Thanks, Jamie.
Yeah, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for our presenters today? If you do, you can either unmute and ask, or you can put it in the chat. I'm also going to put the workshop feedback form in the chat. And if you could just fill that out at some point today, Colorado PTA would greatly appreciate that.
I think we're just taking all that in. That's a lot of information.
It is a lot of good information, but a lot, yes.
Yes, it's amazing information. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for attending.
And like she said, all these will be presented out for everybody that signed up for convention to rewatch or watch again or look at the slide decks and the resources. If there is no other questions, I'm going to go ahead and end this meeting and invite you all to join us at 10 o'clock to start our, it's not our general meeting. It is motivation and celebration at 10 a.m. this morning. Thanks again, Lori and Carol.
And Martha has also joined us.
Oh, sorry. I didn't see her join us, but thank you, Martha.